Hello, my name is Ramon Villa, and I'm going to talk about positive versus negative support for false narratives, in particular the case of the Alita Challenge versus the boycott Captain Marvel. So, just a quick recap, the Captain Marvel movie was the first female-led superhero movie that was produced by Marvel Studios, and it opened to commercial success despite some social media controversy. One of the main controversies surrounding the story was actually false information about the star of the movie, Brie Larson, which led to calls to boycott the movie on Twitter. So basically, she made some comments trying to suggest for more diversity in the news score and the critic score, and people actually either intentionally or unintentionally actually interpreted it as bigoted remarks that were actually man-hating and sexist. So from this, basically two main campaigns were born that had the same underlying goal, which was to boycott the movie. The first and most obvious one was just #boycott Captain Marvel, which called for a direct boycott, repeating those types of false stories. And the other one was the #Alita Challenge, which basically was a hijacked hashtag related to a separate movie, Alita Battle Angel, and it also called for the boycott of the Captain Marvel movie, but it offered a positive alternative. So basically, you didn't just call for the boycott of the movie, you actually told people to substitute the movie with another movie that had a female lead. And yeah. So what we observed, we basically followed both discussions through the overall Captain Marvel social media trail on Twitter, and we observed that #Alita Challenge was more relevant to the overall conversation. It was better integrated in the overall conversation that boycott Captain Marvel. As we see in the graph, boycott Captain Marvel was a little bit more fringe and outside the main hashtags that were discussed throughout Twitter. And to have a better understanding of the discussion overall, we also classified the type of users that engaged in this discussion. So we used a neural network classifier that basically studied the profiles of the users and determined the type of user based on their engagement. And even though most of the conversation was handled by normal users, we did observe that celebrity and media organizations assisted in the spread of these types of messages 4 times over. And this is relevant because they mainly didn't engage in the other type of story that was mostly negative. So basically, the proposal of another substitute movie helped them to kind of like prevent any type of backlash regarding misogyny. And again, that's one of the reasons that we found it had a lot more reach in the social media conversation. We also studied the presence of bots in the discussion, and even though most of the overall signal is the same for both discussions in percentage-wise, we did observe that bots, and this is kind of like what you observe in general, that bots do account for more of the spread of the message than the originating new tweets. So now to actually study the diffusion of the stories, here we have basically the main original tweets through the conversation and how they actually diffuse, measured mainly by retweets. And this is one of the evidence we have that the hashtag was actually hijacked. It didn't actually care about Alita in general. It was just used as an excuse to to boycott Captain Marvel, because as we see, most of the discussion regarding the Alita Challenge started closer to the point where Captain Marvel was released than to the point where the Alita movie was released. We also see that the Alita Challenge was more widely shared. It reached a wider audience, and it basically diffused deeper in the different networks. And we we posit that this happened because, well, when you basically combine false information with positive actions, then like go see X but don't see Y, it's better than just calling for a negative, which is just boycott. And that's why we see as much as 5 times more retweets and 2 times more origin tweets. Now, the response of the stories, we also studied the response of the stories by classifying the type of stance that the responses to each of the original tweets had. So the graph basically shows us the retweets over time of the different responses, and we do see that the responses were mainly negative, but the response to boycott Captain Marvel was negligible. And one interesting thing that we do observe is that if we see the point where the story actually started to dwindle, the diffusion kind of stopped, there was a spike in the negative responses. So what type of relationship did this spike have on the end of the hashtag? That's an interesting question to actually study. So just to summarize, our work was mostly a case study, so we do need more examples, but we did observe that positive framing of actions do motivate participation in this case, and it's observed in the literature as well. And one of the reasons that Alita Challenge may have been more successful is not only because it offered this positive alternative, but we also did observe more coordination in part of a orchestrated campaign by the hijackers. So, thank you.